Tweaked, a novel study by Owen Wong. Introduction. Imagine a world where your own brother turns from an innocent and kind child to a drug addict who will stop at nothing to get his hands on even the tiniest bit of crack. What would you do? How would you feel? The book Tweaked by Katherine Holubitsky tells this brilliant story through the point of view of Gordy Jessup, a 16-year-old boy who tries desperately to bring his family closer together through resolving their conflicts. Summary. The book starts off with a flashback from when Gordy was 11 and his brother Chase was 12. It turns out that times have changed now, and his brother, who once was a sweet and innocent child, is now a crazy drug addict and has been arrested for aggravated assault. But things change 6 months later when Chase returns home having made bail. The problem? Chase has a $2,000 debt he needs to pay off, and Gordy is not sure if he is trustworthy. Gordy finally ends up deciding to help Chase pay off his debt, but the second Gordy takes his eyes off him, Chase makes a run for it, along with Gordy's money. Now, Gordy is set on finding Chase, wherever he is, and making things right once and for all. Things take a turn for the better when police show up. Gordy and Detective Kepler team up and track Chase down together, promising that they'll get him eventually. Meanwhile, Chase has secretly been meeting up with Gordy's mom, who is still in denial and claims it's the drug's fault. Chase then decides to turn to Gordy for help again and asks to borrow $500. This time, however, Gordy says no and calls the police. By the time Detective Kepler shows up, Chase is long gone. A while goes by without any news of Chase, but suddenly one day, Gordy sees on TV that someone stole a woman's car and was speeding down the highway. The police surrounded him, but instead of obeying, he swallowed a large amount of drugs and died later on. Gordy didn't see the man's face at all, but he knew it was Chase. Conflicts. There are two main types of conflicts present in the story. These are person versus person and person versus self. Person versus person conflict is shown through the two brothers Chase and Gordy. Chase has always been causing trouble to the family, whereas Gordy is the one always trying to resolve them. Chase steals things from Gordy and sells them in order to get money. At one point in the story, Gordy decides to help Chase pay off his debt to his drug dealers. This ends up in Chase betraying Gordy, taking his money, and buying even more drugs. Gordy thinks that Chase has completely ruined his life. The second type of conflict is person versus self, and this is shown with Gordy versus himself. Gordy has a lot of different emotions throughout the story, and he often finds it hard to concentrate or make decisions. One example of this conflict is when Chase asks Gordy to pay off his debt. Gordy doesn't say no immediately, and instead takes a long time to consider if he should actually help Chase. He doesn't know if Chase can actually be trusted, and he keeps thinking he's going to get betrayed. This leads back to self-conflict once again, since he often stresses over how he's going to tell his parents and the police what is happening with Chase. He knows that telling the truth is a good thing to do, however, he has already gotten into trouble with his parents before, and he knows that his parents will be very mad at any bad news that is brought up. The final example of person versus self conflict is when Gordy constantly overthinks about everything. Overthinking messes up Gordy's social and school life. He overthinks about Chase, his actions, his parents, and everything he's doing, to a point where he is unable to focus at school, and therefore he ends up failing his tests and exams. Topics. There are three main topics that reoccur all throughout the book. The topics are betrayal, relationships, and addiction. There's a constant sense of betrayal in the book, and is always the result of misplaced trust. First, Gordy mistrusts Chase. Gordy promises to pay off Chase's drug debts as long as Chase promises to never ever touch drugs again after this incident. When Chase receives the money, however, he only pays $500 off and uses the other $1,500 on drugs. Next, Gordy's mom betrays the dad and Gordy. Gordy and his dad lock the house up and promise to stop helping Chase by giving him money. Gordy later finds out that his mom has been secretly meeting up with Chase and giving him money for drugs, since she prays that he will spend at least some of the money on actual necessities. Now, there's a topic of relationships. Relationships are a huge part of this story and Gordy's life, as Gordy basically sacrifices everything in order to resolve conflicts and bring his family and friends closer together. Gordy's relationship with his family is heavily affected in this story. They start the story off as a family where everyone is friends, but as the story progresses, and due to all the betrayal, everyone starts to grow apart. Chase separates from his family, Gordy's dad separates from his mom, and Gordy separates from his parents altogether. Sometimes, Gordy is literally afraid of going home and seeing his parents, and by the end of the story, the family barely talks to each other anymore. Not only is Gordy's family relationship affected, his friendships are too. Gordy often tells his close friends everything about Chase, and sometimes they even go out together to help Gordy look for Chase when he's missing. This actually ends up in Gordy and his friends getting in trouble sometimes, and thus weakens the friendship a little. Finally, we have the strong topic of addiction. Addiction in the story is the root cause of all the troubles and hardships that everyone has to face, but mainly Chase himself. Because of Chase's drug addiction, he makes a lot of irrational decisions that negatively impact his life. For example, he always borrows a crap ton of money that he is unable to return. At one point, he was $5,000 in debt to the bank. He also steals people's belongings and money and sells them for a quick buck in order to get high. In the beginning of the book, Chase literally kills a man because he was so high that he wasn't thinking clearly. This led to him being arrested for aggravated assault. We can see that if Chase stopped doing drugs, he could potentially cut off all his bad habits. But the thing is, he is physically and mentally unable to stop with the drugs because he is too addicted to a point of no return. Theme. The theme. Denial of a problem leads to misplaced trust and lack of responsibility, which leads to unresolved problems. Three quotes to support the theme. First quote. I never understood how mom and dad couldn't see how he was hooked. How could they be so naive? It took me a while to realize it was because they didn't want to see it. They made every excuse to avoid admitting that drugs were the reason he was in such bad physical shape. Page 26. Second quote. He told my parents he needed to borrow the car to pick up a few things. Like what? Dad asked. There was no doubt by his tone that he didn't believe him. But before he'd even have the time to invent an excuse, Mom stepped in. She argued that they would eventually have to trust him again, so what was the harm in letting him take the car to the store? Reluctantly, Dad gave in. Chase returned 3 days later, starving, stinking, and ready to crash. Dad was furious. Page 59. Third quote. Mom's face softened. If Chase could get a diploma for being a manipulator, he would have graduated a long time ago. She gave him the money along with a warning that she really should call the college and run it by Dad, but she didn't want to interrupt his teaching, so she wouldn't as long as Chase gave her his personal promise that he wouldn't take off. He didn't take off, but he did come home at midnight. High. Page 60. All three of these quotes demonstrate how the parents are placing their trust in Chase, who constantly betrays them and thus leads to unresolved problems over and over again. Human nature. Human nature. The book Tweaked by Katherine Holubitsky shows us a lot about human nature and how families behave around each other. Firstly, there is Chase. What we learn about human nature through Chase is that once you become addicted to something, it is really hard to stop. He does a bunch of illegal activities in order to get drugs just because he isn't able to quit. We see Chase constantly lying about changing himself and quitting drugs just to get money from his family members. We also learn that Chase will stop at nothing in order to get money fast. This includes lying, stealing, manipulation, and much more. Secondly, there is Gordy and his family. Here, we learn how the family behaves around a drug addict. Normally, a drug addict is shamed upon and can be seen as untrustworthy. However, since the drug addict is a part of their family, the parents and Gordy can't help but care about Chase. The family has been together for many, many years, and they have all developed unique relationships with each other, even if one of them is a criminal. Although Gordy and his parents are cautious and skeptical at times, they always end up giving in and helping Chase. Connections. The first connection is the connection to news. My news article talks about the overdose crisis in British Columbia, Canada. My theme relates to this article because of the drug overdose part. A lot of people start doing drugs in order to resolve a problem that is going on through their life. They mistrust the wrong people, start doing drugs, and the next thing you know, they're addicted. Once you're addicted, it's very hard to take responsibility again, and that is why a lot of people end up overdosing, just like in the article. My second connection is to Romeo and Juliet, a text we read in class. The part of my theme, the lack of responsibility leads to unresolved problems, is also present in Romeo and Juliet. In Romeo and Juliet, Friar Lawrence is an irresponsible adult whose actions lead to many unresolved problems. One example of this is when he marries Romeo and Juliet. Friar Lawrence thinks that by marrying Romeo and Juliet, he can hopefully bring peace between the Montagues and the Capulets. However, there are many reasons why he is lacking responsibility in this scenario. Firstly, Friar Lawrence mentions that Romeo is moving too fast from Rosaline, and he thinks that this is a bad idea. However, he continues with it nonetheless. Then, he marries Romeo and Juliet without the consent of their parents, and later he keeps it a secret from everyone, including friends and family. This ends up with the original problem of the Montagues and Capulets not being resolved at all. Thank you for listening to my novel study.